This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. We want to begin this hour with new efforts to end the partial government shutdown. Now in its second week, there's hope for a breakthrough today with President Donald Trump inviting Democratic and Republican congressional leaders to the White House. But he's not backing down on his demand for funding for a border wall to end that shutdown.
We are not giving up. We have to have border security, and the wall is a big part of border security, the biggest part.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says congressional leaders are invited for a border security briefing from senior Homeland Security officials. But Fox News reports Sanders called Pelosi's plan to end the shutdown a non-starter. Our Mark Martin is following this story for us today. He joins us now. So the president issued a tweet to the incoming House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Tell us about that.
That's true. A very simple tweet. It was a question. It said, let's make a deal. And that does suggest, possible progress to end this government shutdown, which is now entering day 12. But Pelosi responded to the president's tweet about a possible deal. She said that Trump has given Democrats a great opportunity to show how we will govern responsibly and quickly pass our plan to end the irresponsible Trump shutdown. So again, she fired back. So seems like the stalemate is still continuing.
So do you think that both sides are willing to come to a compromise at this point?
It doesn't look like it, but once they get there in the White House, the last time they met, there was that scuffle, so to speak, verbal scuffle in front of the press. But again, things could happen. There could be a change when they're meeting face to face in person there at the White House. But it doesn't look like it, at least from these tweets. And then Press Secretary Sarah Sanders calling it a non-starter. She says that the Democrats' plan puts other countries above the needs of Americans. So you have that in the background as well.
Could anything be accomplished, you think, today at the White House meeting, the president inviting Republican and Democratic leaders to speak to him? Do you think anything's going to happen here?
Well, it is a step in the right direction, the fact that they are going to meet in person. Like I said earlier, that there could be a compromise, somewhat of a compromise reached. But again, it's a step that they're actually talking in person and not just doing these exchanges on social media. I do want to mention that the Democrats take control of the House tomorrow, and they are expected to pass their plan. But administration officials say the president is in no rush to end the government shutdown over the border battle. He's demanding $5 billion for the border wall and is sticking to that. So, we have to see what happens here in this meeting, but it's not looking like too much is going to happen. But then again, meeting face to face can be a lot different than exchanging via social media.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark.
Sure.
We will be following this story for you at our website, cbnnews.com. Plus, be sure to catch the latest on this story with expert analysis on today's Faith Nation from our Washington Bureau. That airs at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on the CBN News Channel. Here now is a quick look at some other stories we're following for you today inside the CBN newsroom. A retired Marine and U.S. citizen is being detained in Russia on accusations of spying. 48-year-old Paul Whelan was arrested in Moscow Friday. The Russian Federal Security Service announced his arrest 3 days after it happened. They say Whelan was caught during an espionage operation, but gave no details. His family says they are deeply concerned for his safety and well-being. They say the charges aren't true, and Whelan was in Moscow attending a wedding. A Pakistani Christian is fighting to stay in the UK after being threatened with execution by Islamic extremists in his home country. Asher Sampson arrived in the UK in 2004 to become a pastor. He later applied for asylum after receiving threats from extremists during his visits home, but his request was denied. He was arrested in late December and told by British authorities he would be deported. Sampson is now out on bail, but he told The Independent he is terrified of being sent back to Pakistan. A petition has been started to keep him in the UK. A volcano on the island of Bali in Indonesia shot ash 750 feet into the air earlier this week. Mount Agung erupted for about 3 minutes, spewing white clouds of smoke and ash. No one was hurt. Meanwhile, the volcano that triggered both a landslide and tsunami that killed more than 400 people in Indonesia has now shrunken in size. And Anak Krakatau has lost close to 750 feet in height. Scientists are now working to interpret what the reduction in size actually means. Just days away from joining the Senate's Republican majority, Senator-elect Mitt Romney broadly criticized President Donald Trump's policy and character and argued that the president has not risen to the mantle of the office. His Washington Post op-ed is getting full coverage on all the national media today. The Media Research Center says Trump bashing by the media itself was extreme in 2018 and has a name: Trump derangement syndrome. CBN's Charlene Aaron talked with MRC's Tim Graham about the facts behind their findings.
Tim, you are director of media analysis, and your Newsbusters website has many examples of the bias, especially against the president. As bold as he can be on Twitter, the media definitely wasn't quiet. What are a couple of examples of this?
Well, I mean, we see it every day. I mean, I think that there is a tendency on the part of the media to not just simply see President Trump as a bad president. I think they tend to present him as an evil president. They tend to compare him to Hitler. We had an example where Joe Scarborough on MSNBC suggested that his policy on the border, where they were separating illegal alien parents and their children, he was comparing it to like Nazi death camps or what Hitler did. It's that sort of hyperbole where you just look at them and say, how on earth are you saying something like this? And how on earth would you suggest that you, the journalists, are the ones who are careful about facts, unlike the president and his supporters?
Amazing. Do you see anything changing for 2019?
I think obviously the political environment changes with the Democrats taking control of the House. So I think what we'll be looking for is that whole idea of they always find lots of extreme behavior from conservative Republicans. They find lots of extreme rhetoric from conservative Republicans. And obviously we'll be showing examples of what we consider to be extreme rhetoric from liberal Democrats and socialists, the Bernie Sanders, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, the Maxine Waters people screaming for impeachment. None of those people will be presented as unreasonable or extreme. And that's one of the things we'll be looking for.
Absolutely. And what's the concern here beyond the bias? Is it the culture overall?
Well, I think that what's funny about all of this, and we've, again, something that's perennial, but it's gotten nastier. Obviously, social media, when we're all looking at each other's social media, and social media like Twitter is so prominent in the news coverage, we get this idea that somehow the political culture is nasty in a historic way when they forget little things like the Civil War. But obviously, people aren't restrained, and people to some extent get rewarded for being obnoxious. But I think what they tend to miss or what they downplay is that liberals are plenty obnoxious. They somehow present this as something that only Trump causes. I think it's quite obvious that incivility is a two-way street.
Absolutely. Tim, do you see our nation ever being able to come together and show respect despite political and social differences?
Well, democracy is messy. And, I would say to you, I like a little partisanship. I like a little debate. But what you have to be able to do is to be able to do that in a way that doesn't presume that your adversary is evil or stupid. And that's the problem we have sometimes, is that you want to suggest to people, I can respect the thing you're trying to say. And I can respect that what you would like the country to be can be an idealistic vision of how you want America to be, even if I totally disagree with it. So often we would suggest the other person what they really want is some sort of horrible Nazi dictatorship or something, when it's not at all what people want. They want you to stand for the national anthem or something.
Indeed. Tim Graham, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure.
Jerry Falwell says he can't imagine President Donald Trump doing anything that is not good for the country. The president of Liberty University made the comment in an interview with the Washington Post, where he talked about evangelicals and politics. He was asked if it's hypocritical for evangelical leaders to support someone like President Trump with his past. Falwell replied that you can't just choose a president based on their personal behavior. He said, quote, "So you don't choose a president on how good they are. You choose a president based on what their policies are. That's why I don't think it's hypocritical." Coming up, the things we do that lead to bad gut health that can make us sick without even knowing it.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless his people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledge that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
We're talking about the keys to good health this week in our special Build a Better Gut series with CBN News health reporter Lori Johnson. As she explained so far, the key to your good health is often found in your gut, your intestines, and there are things you do or don't do that can make you healthy or sick. Today, Lori Johnson shows us the top ways we abuse our gut and may not even realize we're doing it.
C-sections, baby formula, life-saving drugs, and convenience foods. We tend to think these things make our lives better starting from birth. But turns out they can seriously mess up the balance of good and bad bacteria in our bodies.
So we want to keep those numbers and the composition of the microbiome right where it ought to be, in perfect harmony.
Nearly a century ago, the world rejoiced when Alexander Fleming developed the first antibiotic. Penicillin would target bacterial infections that wiped out millions. Since then, many doctors frequently turn to these so-called miracle drugs, often not considering the downside.
We know that almost all cases of bronchitis, where you cough, basically, where the large airways get inflamed with viruses, almost always it's just a virus. That's not to mean it's trivial disease, but we don't have antibiotics for 99% of them. And yet, 70% of physicians prescribe antibiotics for bronchitis.
And those antibiotics target all bacteria in our body, even the kind we need to keep us healthy.
Antibiotics are equal opportunity drugs. They'll kill the good guys as well as the bad guys.
Gastroenterologist Gerard Mullen, author of The Gut Balance Revolution, says children in particular often lack the good bacteria they need, thanks to well-meaning pediatricians, protective parents, and overprescribed antibiotics.
They're overused indiscriminately in children with earaches and sore throats because there's been linkages not only to obesity but also autoimmune diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease, where they can directly link the number of doses of antibiotics as a child to the probability of developing IBD later in life.
Studies show just one course of antibiotics can disrupt the gut microbiome for years. What's worse, antibiotics often enter our bodies without a prescription because of what we eat. A majority of the antibiotics used in our country go into animal feed.
just in conventional red meat, that there's enough antibiotics in those, those cows that are raised on hormones and on antibiotics. Those are enough. If you eat enough red meat within a week or so, that's enough to change the microbiome unfavorably.
And science proves it. New York University researchers were able to make lab mice obese and diabetic by proportionately giving them the same amount of antibiotics found in our meat supply. So in trying to build a better gut, remember, antibiotics are enemy number one. Running a close second is the standard American diet, what's known as SAD. It's this kind of stuff, what we typically eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus the good that's missing from these meals.
Got to figure out first what's trashing the gut. You got to shut off the faucet and stop hurting the gut. The gut will heal itself over a long time, but you got to stop hurting it.
Consider processed foods a triple threat. They're too sweet, contain no fiber, and are chock full of strange chemicals. The Mayo Clinic's Dr. Purna Kashyap says the culprits tend to hide in the small writing on the list of ingredients.
It's good to read the fine print because there's usually a small line at the end which says emulsifiers or, additives.
Dr. Gail Cresci of the Cleveland Clinic agrees that digesting things not found in nature can cause dangerous inflammation.
And you think about processed foods, there's a lot of foreign chemicals that are in the processed foods. And these are what's called xenobiotics. So it means that it's a foreign chemical, like it's a compound. And the microbiota has to be able to deal with that.
And watch out for words ending in ose, such as dextrose, maltose, and fructose. They're added sugars which, believe it or not, make us fat and starve us at the same time. They rob the bacteria's food supply because our body absorbs sugar before it even gets to our intestines.
Our body is very efficient in using it, which means we're going to slurp it up right away. And as a result, the bacteria then has to try to get food from our lining or other places. So it can harm us because the bacteria are now starving and they will have to rely on our gut lining to get food. Drinks which have high amounts of glucose, fructose, these are the ones which are going to sort of create an artificial state of starvation, not for you, but for the bacteria. It'll definitely give you energy, but it's not going to be good for your bacteria.
But don't think you can replace sugar with artificial sweeteners. They're just as bad, if not worse.
Different bacteria are able to take these artificial sweeteners, and then they actually are able to extract more calories from the diet, and this is linked with insulin resistance and weight gain.
So it's rhetorical that we're taking zero-calorie artificial sweeteners which harm the gut microbiome and ultimately cause us to gain weight, when the purpose was to not gain weight.
When it comes to gut microbiome, the first 2 years set the stage for the rest of life. Believe it or not, the way a baby is born, the type of delivery, makes a big difference. So does the kind of nutrition the baby receives. Dr. Heidi Nelson says C-sections and formula provide inferior bacteria compared with their more natural counterparts.
There is a difference between the vaginal birth and the cesarean birth because the child is, more or less sterile inside the womb, and as they deliver through the vaginal canal, it's understood that they get the microbial population from their mom, that exposure from the mother at that time, and the same type of experience would hold true for breast milk versus a bottle. You want to try to get the right bugs set up in the child.
And you can find more health news right here on the CBN News Channel, with new episodes airing Tuesday nights at 9:30 and then again throughout the week or on demand anytime at cbnnews.com. We'll be right back.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless his people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledge that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
The job market is strong with record low unemployment rates across the country. Still, one demographic struggles to find work, those with special needs. CBN News reporter Caitlin Burke has the story of one man who is out to change that.
It's hard not to smile when you walk into the Howdy homemade ice cream shop in Dallas, Texas.
Howdy.
You may notice something unique in the place, but then the samples start coming and you just get caught up in the experience.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How about you?
Good, thank you very much.
In North Texas alone, there are over 240,000 special needs adults looking for work. Howdy Homemade Ice Cream Shop is looking to tackle that statistic as the first for-profit business to only hire special needs workers.
There isn't anything that's warm and fuzzy about this. This is saying that we're a for-profit business. Our employees and the people that our employees represent are a huge opportunity for the restaurant industry and other industries to really start to hire.
Restaurant vet Tom Landis sees special needs employees as a solution to some of the industry's biggest problems.
Employee turnover and poor customer service, and those are both solved I think by people with special needs, that they're friendly continuously over and over again when the average employee just isn't. And at Howdy, we have a 0 turnover rate. You know, our guys love it, and they want to stay around.
When Landis first felt this inspiration, he wanted to give these workers the best shot at success. Coleman was Landis's first employee.
One of the big football teams has its annual dinner at one of my other restaurants, and we're busy, and Coleman was there as, I think, team manager, but he just kind of started passing out food and helping, and you know, we just kind of noticed him of here's a kid that you know, he didn't need to serve others, he was there, but not only that, he was so, I mean, he's, you know, I felt like by the end of the night he had more friends in that restaurant than I did, and that, you know, he's exactly what the restaurant industry needs.
I like to help make the ice cream sometimes, but personally I also like to be friendly and say hi to the customers or even say howdy to the customers.
Landis wants others to not only appreciate his business model, but to replicate it. And it's not just the restaurant industry he hopes to change.
It takes some additional upfront patience, love, but I think, I mean, God made those with Down syndrome to truly be the very best in the hospitality sense of the word. And then also that those on the autism spectrum, there's just an incredible opportunity for those minds to be harnessed, I think, in the restaurant industry, but also beyond.
As word spreads, interest grows. Landis says at least 50 people want to franchise Howdy Homemade, with new offers coming in each day. Each and every employee not only exceeds their boss's expectations, but those of their parents, teachers, and even their own. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Dallas, Texas.
Coming up, a major victory for Chance the Rapper while taking a break from his busy life to seek God. Stay with us.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless his people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledge that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Chance the Rapper is praising God for being able to quit smoking cigarettes. A few weeks ago, he told fans he was taking a sabbatical to read his Bible. At the end of day 7, he announced he'd quit smoking cigarettes and posted on Instagram, "Today is my 7th day, 0 cigarettes. # leave it at the altar." The photo also highlights Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, which reads, "Now all glory to God, who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think." All right, now time for your Wednesday word, and I leave you with this possible change in perspective. Your mistakes aren't failures. They're lessons learned to move you closer to God's intended success. In God, there is no failure. So walk in his path of peace and learn the lessons he's teaching you on the journey. That will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at CBNnews.com. You can also join us anytime at the CBN News channel. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make it a wonderful Wednesday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.